People have a skewed perspective of the role of the Scrum Master. Limited authority, limited scope, limited ability to influence organizational change. One of my dog's favorite things is that we walk in the woods and I talk to myself. So I thought I would record it. Here's my dog. Coco, let's go for a walk. So there's a topic I've been thinking about. I've realized that participants in my Scrum classes, my recent Scrum classes, my recent Kanban classes, over the past few years, I've noticed this pattern. People have a skewed perspective of the role of the Scrum Master. Their enterprise hires Scrum Masters. The job descriptions call for a few certifications. Maybe these are people that came through my class. They were in my class for 2 days. Prior to my class, they were a project manager, a business analyst, and then after my class, they're suddenly a Scrum Master. And I don't begrudge people for coming to my class, of course, or pursuing a certification. But the Scrum Master course is the entry point. It's not the destination. You're not a master of Scrum. You have studied the role of the Scrum Master and the design of Scrum. It's now time to go and apply it, practice it. The job descriptions call for 2 or 3 years experience. It's difficult for hiring managers to know the history, the work background of the applicants. The salaries tend to be, I would say, entry level, the kind of salary that looks attractive to a recent university graduate, maybe their first job. Maybe they've been a junior developer for 3 years and now they're expanding their skills to become on the road to becoming a team lead. So they take a Scrum Master course. Maybe they are project managers who studied with the Project Management Institute or conventional project management methods, critical path planning techniques. And now, due to a kind of current in the marketplace, they find themselves interested in learning about Scrum. I believe this has led to a systemic misunderstanding of the role of the Scrum Master. Organizations that were adopting Scrum 20 years ago, they were let's call them the early adopters. Agility was perhaps part of their DNA already, and they saw Scrum as a set of working agreements that was highly compatible and perhaps provided some consistency in an environment that was relatively scrappy and perhaps seemingly chaotic, like many startups are. Or we're talking about early adopters of Scrum that were in need of disruption. Scrum provided a new set of working agreements that disrupted the conventional bureaucracy of their organization, and that was deeply needed, perhaps. And then the early majority adopters were the companies who saw some early results of Scrum. They felt that those results were good. And so they invited their staff to go to training, learn about Scrum, bring these ideas back into the enterprise, perhaps to get a leg up on the competitor. Many of my clients through 2015, 16, 17, I would categorize in that group. These were younger companies, product companies perhaps, that had existed for 7 or 8 years and found value in adopting some of the Scrum working agreements. These were the more innovative departments of enterprises, banks, telcos, insurance agencies. They saw Scrum as a way to infuse new ideas into their IT area. It's clear that the people currently educating themselves about Scrum are the late majority adopters. The organizations that support this education, perhaps they believe that the people out there in the job market who advertise themselves as Scrum Masters have a toolbox of best practices at the ready, that these practices are tried and true, and that you can hire just anyone who can bring these ideas into the organization and immediately apply them in the day-to-day work. I find it helpful, however, to think about the early adopters. Who were they? What was their interest in Scrum? What did they bring to the role? Maybe they were like me. I was introduced to Scrum in 2007. By that time, I had been writing software for 13, 14 years, quite seriously. I had been through a career change. I had held a few positions. I was in a managerial role. I had worked in a startup environment. I was now working in an enterprise. I was a webmaster. That's what the job was called. And working directly with a CTO in an enterprise with hundreds of staff. And I learned about Scrum, and I saw in it a way to mitigate risk, a way to adapt to changing requirements, a way to focus the development effort on near-term objectives and deliver frequently. I saw in it a way to interact more directly with users. I'd like you to imagine for a moment a person somewhere between 1995 and 2005. They're in their late 30s, their 40s, their 50s. They've been a manager of teams for many years. Maybe they've started their own company, and maybe they were quite successful as a tech startup. They had been writing software for many years. They had experienced the hardship of negotiating contracts with large enterprises who want predictability. They want certainty about end states, scope, time, and budget. They know, however, that the work we're doing in software development and digital systems management is complex, and therefore the end states cannot be known. These people had lived through that challenge. And when they started to learn of Scrum and other Agile practices, they weren't even called Agile practices in 1995 when Scrum was introduced, but they were iterative and incremental development practices. They were lightweight planning and delivery methods. And when they were learning about these, they were naturally attracted to them because these ideas matched the way that they naturally worked and gave a language around the negotiation with large enterprises who don't quite understand iterative and incremental development. Wow. So these are the sorts of folks that would introduce themselves to the authors of Scrum, show interest, and learn about the framework, learn about the practice, and take these ideas back to their own companies and volunteer to be a Scrum Master. Think about that for a moment. They were deeply experienced. They had already held management roles. They were working in a company in which they already held an authoritative position. They probably had influence, if not direct decision-making authority over the organizational design. So when we consider the role of the Scrum Masters and those early adopters, and now apply that imagination to phrases that we hear about Scrum Masters, things like Scrum Masters facilitate the evolution of the team. Yeah, they are experienced mentors. They are keen negotiators. They are savvy investors. They have been developer and product manager and company owner all at once. And now they have shown interest in focusing their contribution toward the team facilitation and team evolution. When we say Scrum Masters remove obstacles, we're talking about the organizational obstacles that get in the way of delivery. And so the early adopter Scrum Masters, they were able to negotiate organizational change in order to clear the path for the teams and help everybody focus on product goals and iterative and incremental frequent delivery of working software. These were people who could embody the values of Scrum: courage, openness, focus, respect, and commitment, because they had lived it. And not only could they embody it, but they could encourage these values in others by leading by example. In your own setting, if you find that the Scrum Masters have limited authority, limited scope, limited ability to influence organizational change, to dissolve the dependencies that prevent your team from owning more of the quality of the product, it's helpful to remember that history, I think. Perhaps that puts things into perspective. Enjoy your day.